everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week I am going to be attempting to get my Jane Seymour from Six cosplay, that's Six the musical. I'm going to be attempting to get it as complete and as finished as humanly possible in time for a Halloween party this Saturday. Which is very soon because today is Monday. And right now we've got a good base start done. Like I did quite a bit in the last video. So if you have not yet seen the last video, definitely go check that out. I will link that right up here and then also down below in the description. The main thing that I did in that video was tell you about the project for one, but also was to make the skirt. And the skirt is not done, it is mostly done. It is just about wearable. The hem is pinned, so the hem needs to finish being hand hemmed, and I need to put hooks and bars on the waist. And what really needs to happen, that may not happen by the party, particularly because of a recent development from today, is that every seam and kind of like every division line in here is supposed to get studded. And by studded, I mean like a nail head stud, not like a rhinestone stud. So there is stud trim that goes throughout. And speaking of that stud trim, I had been anticipating some, it's technically heat fix stud trim that like already is on a piece of ribbon, for lack of a better term. It's not ribbon, but already on a piece of trim with a whole ton of studs. I had been anticipating that to arrive actually tomorrow. It arrived today and it's narrower than I thought it was going to be. And so now I'm really torn on like, this is really the only way for me to possibly have studs by this weekend at all, both on the skirt and also on the bodice, even though that is low priority because that's decorative and not like, you know, necessary for the recognizability or the wearability of this cosplay. But yeah, I ordered this stud trim from Planet Rhinestones, which is down in LA, and it shipped super fast, which was great. But on the image on their website, because I realized today when I looked back at it that it did not actually tell me it was 10 millimeters. It just gave me this image right here, which I took to mean inches top and millimeters, centimeters bottom. And I was looking at that and it looked like it would be 10 millimeters. And in hindsight, looking at it, I'm like, is that actually just 1 inch that's being divided in really, really weird methods that don't make sense? And like one way that's divided in fifths? Who divides an inch into fifths? So I'm waiting for them to get back to me. But basically what was sent to me was this. It looks like little eyes on here, but that's just the way it's reflecting the light and the ring light, I think, because it's just a dome. But it is a gunmetal black stud trim, and this is only 8 millimeters wide. And I really, really, really wanted 10 millimeters, and I feel like this just kind of disappears into the skirt in particular. Like I'm sure on the bodice it won't be as, you know, kind of nothing, but like look at that. It just, I feel like it just completely disappears. And for Jane's costume, most versions, especially nowadays, have the gunmetal trim. There have been a couple of versions that have had the silver trim. I think those were really, really old ones. But Amazon actually does sell 10 millimeter wide of the silver studs. Naturally, I already returned the one package that I had bought because this was due to arrive, and now it says that it can't get here until after the Halloween party, of course. So like that is a possibility. The other thing, I mean, that they actually do for the stage show is that they take grosgrain ribbon and they literally put the studs on the grosgrain ribbon, all of them lined up all next to each other, which sounds like a whole lot of work and a whole lot of money too, because studs are still pretty expensive. And obviously this winds up being like thousands of studs because I got 30 yards of this trim. I did my math and I needed upwards of 25 yards of this. So yeah, the idea of putting that many thousands of studs on trim when I don't have a stud setter and I don't know what you use to set studs besides an 80s and 90s bedazzler, I would really much rather do this type of trim, even if I wind up having to hand sew it on either side, as opposed to actually using the hot fix, because I don't think that this fabric can take the heat of a hot fix type situation. So yeah, that's where I'm at with studs. But in other news, as far as like where I'm at with the rest of this project, in the very end of the last video, I showed you that I had laid out the silver holographic and net material on the under blouse bodice thing, whatever we're going to call it. At this point, I have actually now sewn that in place. And I wanted to use a zigzag stitch on my machine to sew it in place, particularly the edges where it kind of just, it ends onto the black fabric. I really had wanted to use a zigzag on that. For one thing, if you use a straight stitch on stretch material and you have a lot of like pull on that stretch, your straight stitches are going to pop. A zigzag stitch prevents that, or at least decreases the possibility that they're going to pop. However, my machine, I should say my machines, do not like this fabric combination right here at all. And both of my sewing machines, my normal one and my old like backup Viking machine, absolutely refuse to do a zigzag stitch on this combo of material. And granted, like at this edge here, we're talking a fold of the holographic, a fold of the netting, so 2 layers of each, plus the 1 layer that's quite thick of this. I've tried different needles. I don't have any ballpoint needles, but I tried Universal. I tried Microtex, which is Sharps also. They refused. What they did mostly wind up doing, I say mostly because it skipped some of the stitches, but not every single one, like on a zigzag, is I did a blanket stitch. I don't know if you can see that at all. I feel like you can see a couple of them right in there. So yeah, I did a blanket stitch on the machine and it seems to be able to be stretched, which is good. And it does kind of catch that edge down, which is really what I wanted, to just like completely flatten and compress it down and not have any sort of lip. I do have a couple places with lip where it was skipping a significant amount of stitches, but it was a much better option than just a straight stitch. So now I have to hope that my machine will allow me to sew the sides together. I am planning to use a stretch stitch for this, which is similar to a zigzag being just like this, so it's even all the way. A stretch stitch, it's much narrower and it goes like this. And that is the most common form of stretch stitch that kind of mimics a straight stitch. You can also do a triple stitch, which is really, it is a straight stitch that's going back over itself, but the stretch stitch is the most common one. So I would like to use a stretch stitch on these side and shoulder seams. I don't know if my machine's going to let me do that, but I am going to attempt it. And we shall see how that goes. And then once that's done, I can go ahead and start on the sleeves for this under bodicey, blousey thing. I really need to come up with a name for this garment piece. So if you watched last week's video, you will know that for the body of the shirt, I traced out a really well-fitted top that I have. This is not a well-fitted top, but it has a pretty nicely fitted long sleeve. So this time I am tracing out the sleeve of a different top here, and the chalk lines that I've marked on here are because of that other contrast panel that runs under the arm. Now, I think I mentioned this in the last video, but it is actually supposed to be mesh. I tried to go to one Joann's by the time the last video had finished to get mesh and they could not find it. I called another Joann's in between that video and now they could not find the 7 yards they were supposed to have either. So we're just gonna go with the black fabric that I have, and you know, if all else fails, maybe if I find mesh in the future I can switch it out. But yeah, I'm just gonna have a black like solid panel there, and then the rest of this is going to be the sparkly and the mesh. And so I have now traced out that sleeve here, adding in my seam allowance here, just for the upper portion. And then I'm going to need to trace out the little strip that runs down the inside of the arm as well. And I believe that strip is there so that the like meshy holographic-y fabric doesn't get caught on the studs of the bodice where the underarm would rub it. So I have the sleeve mock-up assembled here, though I have not tried it on yet. Instead, what I really want to do is to kind of look at and alter the pattern for the actual bodice. So this is McCall's 7306. That is this pattern right here, if you're looking for the pattern envelope. And this has a bustier in it that has cups that are pieced together. Now, this is a really good look, other than the fact that we've got that kind of seam on the under boob, if you will. This is a really good look for the style that is on Broadway. However, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this one right here, which is the UK version of this costume. And as you can see, while this dips all the way down, which is the Broadway style, the UK one actually is a little higher, which just seems a little bit more comfortable for me. And so what I'm doing here is I'm drawing in some changes to this pattern that I think will make it more like that UK version. So the biggest thing here is that this is just like a regular Victorian type bustier, where we're going pretty low over the hips, and that is not what this costume is at all. And to be honest, I think that I may need to raise this even more, but I have cut off some of the length of the bottom over the hips on all of these. I am also usually a little bit longer waisted than patterns like this. I am not increasing the size of this pattern at all at this moment, nor am I decreasing it, though we might get there. This pattern should be 2 inches smaller than me. Now that is 2 inches smaller than my uncorseted measurements. And this is going to be worn over a corset. So that's why I think I'll be able to make this go smaller, but I'd rather cut it to the full size and then take in from there. And I want a 2-inch lacing gap up the back. That's my goal. So what I've done here, there are basically enough pattern pieces that we get all of the sort of like Tudor grid work, if you will, of the bodice, if you go ahead and divide this one really wide piece here into 2, which I think works just fine, because dividing this big pattern piece into 2 makes those pieces about as wide as these front ones. However, this piece right here, and also to a lesser degree this piece, they're really wide. So I'm honestly hoping that I can take some of the width out of these 2 pattern pieces, because they're just, yeah, they're really wide. The other thing that I'm doing here is I'm changing the shape of the under bust portion here, because the UK version has a much wider cup, and again, it doesn't have a separation right in the center. So first off, I have folded in the seam allowance over here, because mine is going to be cut on the fold with a piece of the stud tape, etc., delineating the center front. And then I'm dropping this down a bit so that we get just a really subtle peak. And same with over here, I've cut off a tiny bit here because it just was getting too curved up, and that would go over to here to make it that curved up. Now, if we look closely at this picture right here on the side, you can see that her cup actually comes to where this seam line is right here. So I think I'm going to curve it out to there. The other thing is that her side and then back goes up higher than what this pattern has. So I'm raising all of this by 1 inch. I honestly am tempted to go a little bit higher, maybe even 1.5 inches, and then cut it down from there, because I think it's definitely low. Like, we can see as we come out of the cup that it's way higher on the side and then down. So yeah, I'm honestly probably going to go 1.5 inches up on all of these, because again, I would rather be able to cut off and not have to cut a whole separate mock-up. So let's go ahead and cut out some mock-up fabric with all of these changes in mind, and I will get to trying it on at some point, but we're also going to be tackling the sleeves still as well. So I'm trying to puzzle out the bust cup at the moment, because looking at this, like, I haven't done a bust cup like this before or like this before. And I'm trying to figure out how to get from here to here, because obviously this is a different pattern shape. We have a seam going kind of up the center right here, and I don't want that. What I want is a seam around here, and then possibly, I am honestly wondering if there's another seam in there, because otherwise I feel like this is going to be gaping away if there's not a seam maybe hidden under one of those stud lines, because yeah, it just seems like something needs to be able to bring it back, to curve it back in. And I don't know that I can get all of that shaping just from the center or just from the side over here. So I have pinned together the pattern pieces that create the bust cup in the pattern. This is the size D bust cup. And first off, I feel like it's very conical. I mean, this is just pinned, not sewn or anything like that. But yeah, I pinned it together to see how it goes. And then I've drawn in a line that is kind of my estimation of where the black section needs to go on like the under boob area here. And we'll see if that actually works out. But now I'm kind of thinking, like, I don't really want to cut up and destroy this, but I don't know that I have any other choice in order to get a line like this and then to add seam allowance. And that will help me to then figure out how to maybe construct the upper portion of this and figure out if I need to add a seam somewhere, like we have this seam going across. Maybe I need, you know, a similar seam that goes across to make that shaping in there. I'm really not sure. So this is going to be quite the puzzle. I have, on the other hand, cut out all of the pieces for like the body part of the bodice. I just cut out one piece of canvas for each of these. Honestly, I will probably double layer canvas is my thought in the actual, and then I have my shiny fabric that's hiding down here. That's going to be the actual upper, like outer fabric. But I feel like canvas just keeps getting thinner and thinner, and this is duck cloth canvas, so it's thicker than what Joann's is calling canvas now, but this still feels really flimsy. Even compared to like my tabletop, it feels really flimsy. So I think I'm probably going to double layer this within the actual corset, even though I'm not going to be using this as a real structure layer because I am going to be wearing it over a corset. Yeah, this bottom piece, when cut off, can go precisely flat. This is still very much a shape, which means that there must be some sort of seam hidden in there. So I think I'm going to kind of draw in one of those other tape lines and try and cut there and see if that will flatten out this piece. I feel like this is not working at all, and I probably should have just freehanded it somehow. This is meant to be the bottom, this is meant to be the middle, this is meant to be the sort of top side, but also I started with a pattern that really wasn't what I wanted anyway, because I need that to go higher and more like squared off in the center, and so that's why we're getting weird pieces like this, which should actually be like this tall over here. And yeah, also I wound up kind of flattening out still this middle piece because it still wanted to be domed. This one was flat, this one was flat, this one still had some shape to it. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. I think I need to freehand this somehow. This is my freehanded pattern. I don't think this is going to make up a boob shape, but we're going to put it together with the rest of the corset and we shall see. In other news though, this is the sleeve mock-up, or like semi-working mock-up that I made. I think it is possibly too long in the sleeve head. It's hard to tell. It feels low in the armpit when the sleeve head is where it's supposed to be. I also think it's a little too loose through the lower arm here because I do want this to be fitted. Since it is knit, it doesn't matter, you know, I have plenty of room to move around, and I've got probably good 2 inches by the time it gets to the wrist, so definitely way too big. That said, I think I might set it into the top and see what this equates to, but yeah, it's I don't know if this one's gonna work as is. Sleeve mock-up is on, and I'm slightly regretting the fact that I used like such a stiff or like thick activewear type fabric here. Like, it feels great on the body part of this, but in the arm, I think particularly because there are multiple seams going on here, it just feels like a lot. That said, I'm also realizing that I have this set wrong because I mean, I have to double check, but I feel like down here where we have like the inset other seam piece, I feel like this should be hitting me more like there as opposed to here, but it's also designed to not rub. So like basically I centered it so that it's centered on the seam here, the section that is underneath the arm, but I feel like by the time it's getting here that it's almost floating to the back. I'm sure you can tell, but the sleeve is pulling right here. So that really probably means that I need more rise in this section, which if I rotated, no, actually if I rotated the whole thing forward, it would make the middle part of the seam or the sleeve be worse, so that would not actually be good. And I think I have too much sleeve head up here because I feel like I had to slightly stretch the body portion to meet the sleeve head. Even though I did already actually cut a little bit off of it, I still had to slightly stretch the body portion, and in doing that I feel like it is actually sticking up away, but you can see it's definitely pulling there. So I need way more sleeve head in this section here, which unfortunately means that I need to recut the whole outer sleeve part. First, I will probably undo the seam here, see how much needs to be added in, and see like what else needs to be changed. I did take in a little bit of the lower sleeve here, probably could go more, to be honest, because it still feels very thick. I really wish that I had that power mesh, Joann's. But yeah, it definitely needs a little more work before we can actually cut out the real sleeve. So I've undone the seam here, and when I kind of lay this together, I am basically getting like an edge to edge match, which means that I have no seam allowance at all going into that. And that means that I need to extend this actually a whole other inch. Honestly, I probably should have cut the shoulder straps wider because I also have not taken in or like done, you know, the finishing on this edge yet, which I'm probably at this point literally going to just like fold in a 1/4 inch and stitch down because I don't have enough fabric. But I'm hoping that by adding an inch here this way, that will give me enough of the sleeve head in this section that I will have movement and that it won't pull it off my shoulder, because that's obviously not what we want. And at this point, I'm going to leave the head as is over here, but I do wonder if it ought to be cut down to match, because again, I had too much sleeve head to actually have a fitted sleeve into the arm side. But because these are knit fabrics, they stretch and you kind of don't see that at all, and you can ease anything with a knit fabric. But yeah, I definitely don't want that to happen. I don't know, maybe an inch actually isn't even enough right here. I might need a little bit more than an inch, but regardless, it means we are recutting this outer sleeve portion. I think the lower will actually be fine and we can use that as is. Here is sleeve mock-up number 2. I feel like there is still a little bit of pull right here, but it is way, way better than it was before. I haven't pressed any seams or anything either, so that could be why some of this is sticking up a little bit. But I took in some of the sleeve head back here. I took about a 1/2 inch in, and then I did increase over here by 1 1/4 inches, tapering that out like up and down. So yeah, I think it's fitting way, way better, and I think the rest of the sleeve is fitting pretty well. There's maybe a little bit of room right here, but I just don't know how small I want to really taper that. So I think that I'm ready to go ahead and cut this out in the top 2 layers of fabrics and, you know, the other sleeve, and actually assemble this sleeve now. So quick little departure from the bodice and top to look at the little head piece here. And I, to be honest, don't even remember what this was called. I found this at Joann's. I just got a little bit of it. And as you can see, it is quite thick. It was in the interfacing section, and it's fusible on this side, but not on this side. And the instructions said that it could be fused together and it could be like fused to hold a shape. So I figured that was kind of going to be as good as I could get. I don't have any Warbler or anything like that, and don't have any access to get it because Joann's doesn't sell it. So yeah, and I need it quickly, obviously. So yeah, I just tried this and it seems to be working. I put it on my little canvas head and kind of got a curve into it. I fused 2 pieces together. This seems to be just about the right size. I know it should look like harder plastic, but this is what we're going to have to go with in a pinch. And then I got these studs from Amazon, and I believe I should just be able to like screw them in on either side of this. Like they've got 2 pieces that kind of screw together, and I think I should be able to just like put them in. I believe there are 14 in total, 7 in front, 7 in back, but I'm going to double check that. And yeah, and then this should be able to just like clip into my hair. I keep worrying that it is maybe coming apart on the edges, but I think that's just because I didn't quite cut it evenly. So yeah, it should work fine in a pinch for the Halloween party. So now that I have the shape at least relatively right, I'm going around and I'm marking where the studs go. I am marking them on the top side just because I feel like that's easier. And then I'm having to transfer the markings to the bottom side by basically putting a pin through one of the holes and then seeing where that sticks through on the other side and making a dot there as well. And then I'm going through from the back side with my awl, and I'm making a very small hole, because basically this little screw piece here, this has to go through the hole that you're making with the awl, and then that screws into one of the studs. Now the actual crown has studs that vary slightly, so I think the front row is slightly shorter and then the ones on the edges are slightly shorter. All of my studs are the same length, so that's what I'm using, and I think it will still look just fine. Okay, so here's the thing. I put together those cup pieces that I had like just kind of, you know, patterned out. I say patterned out, I don't know what I was thinking, because this wound up being the cup. Like, obviously this does not work. And so then I was like, oh, I must have put the bottom piece on upside down because I'm not that crazy. So I flipped it for the other one. No. definitely not. This, no. So then I was like, okay, let's try like draping it on myself. So that's what I've got going on here. I have drawn on, I don't know if you can see the pink lines, I have drawn on and kind of pinned out the shape of like a cup, maybe? I have no idea what I'm doing here with this cup. I don't know why my brain cannot fathom this whatsoever. But yeah, that's what's going on right here. So I'm gonna cut these pieces out and then like recut them with seam allowance because I don't have seam allowance going through this part that I've pinned out here, and see if that makes a cup, and hopefully it does. I have the rest of the bodice put together at this point, so I need to figure out how to put the cup in the bustier. And I'm hoping that this works because these sure didn't. Okay, so obviously this is definitely too pointy, but it is pretty close, I think. I feel like there might need to be slight adjustment to like the curve of the section that is going to be the black section. And I also wonder if it should be a little lower here so that it like comes down a little further, because the point underneath in this style of bodice is fairly shallow, but I think I want to try that on with the rest of the bustier first to see about that. And I also am not positive if this is like the right amount of coverage basically on here, because I don't know how far it's meant to go out this way, but I kind of feel like it might need to go further. So yeah, it's very, very close though. So some tweaking to do, and at least I have a shape that is remotely a boob. This seems much closer. So now there's the question of, will this fit into the bustier? And also the fact that I'm not wearing a corset right now, and I will be wearing a corset. And I'm obviously patterned this with me not wearing a corset, so that is going to potentially change some things, but I feel like this is still the shape that I'm going for. So I'm gonna cut out another one of these and attempt to fit them into the bustier and like sew them together in the center. And yeah, just to show you kind of what I changed, you can see all the weird seam allowances going on. So I tweaked quite a bit on this, but it seems to have come up with a shape that looks just about right. So hopefully this works. So at long last, the sleeves are finally cut out and stitched together and attached to the under bodicey thing. Oh my god, that was like the biggest headache in the world. Not the cutting out or stitching together of the sleeves, but the setting it in the shoulders. My machine really hates this fabric, this holographic fabric. And so when we're talking about like setting it in around the shoulders, we are talking about, for the most part, obviously not right under the underarm, but for the most part, 2 layers of holographic, 2 layers of the mesh, and 2 layers of like the base stretchy black fabric, because that is underneath all of this part of the arm as well. And my machine was having none of it. Oh my god, I could not even tell you how long it just took me to just sew, you know, a 20-inch stitch around, especially on the second sleeve. And all of that said, the sleeves are too large in the forearm, so I don't know how that happened. I swear I had gotten all of that excess out before, but starting probably just about at the elbow and going to just, yeah, I guess just about at the wrist, I need to take some of that in. So I'm probably gonna go ahead and just like pinch some of that out and take that out so it gets a little bit tighter to the forearm. But otherwise, I do think that it looks good. At some point, I probably will add minky on the inside of the shoulder seams because I do feel a little bit of that itch there. And then I do still need to add the band around here, and I need to hem the neckline and the sleeves. To do that, I'm honestly probably just going to turn this in once and do a little stitch line there, because I don't have really much to spare, I think. And also I don't have like stretchy fabric to bind it with unless I cut my own. All of that said, I think other than taking this in, I'm going to leave the hemming and stuff of this until after I fit the bodice, because just in case I wind up needing to cut this lower or wider or anything like that, I will have that option if I have not yet hemmed it. So yeah, I'm gonna take that bit in, and then I'm gonna put on a corset and try on the really weird mock-up that I already know is not great and that only has 1 boob attached to it. I don't think I showed you this part yet, but this piece right here, I do need to for sure raise this up so that it kind of increases this like hypotenuse across here and it connects to up there. Because yeah, it just, this was the original pattern piece. This of course was not, I patterned that myself. And yeah, but something, it looks really funny with only one boob on there, that's for sure. And I obviously do need to try it on over a corset. So I'm gonna fix this and then go put on my corset and we'll see how far off we are on the bodice mock-up. Okay, so first off, I have fixed this sleeve. Looks so much better. Love it. This one is still baggy, so I have to take this one in to match it. Secondly, I just have to give a little complaint about Amazon with all of this, because although I have been so enjoying being able to get things quickly, Amazon is destroying our planet, because I got 3 different pairs of earrings and I also got the chain that goes across the neckline, all of which were going to be delivered today. They were just delivered, literally. They sent these 4 very small items in 4 separate packages. What the heck? Like, that's not okay. That is destroying the planet. Everything should be packaged in the same package and not ruining our planet. Amazon, I am both very reliant on you and very disappointed in you. And now I'm going to open up and see which earrings are going to work. Okay, so here's my very, very weird mock-up. But here's the thing. Wearing this over an overbust corset like this corset is like a very gradual for the bust line. It's a gradual slope out. It's not like a bustier where, you know, you have your corseted section and then your like boob cup section, which is what the outer portion of this is. And so like this is never really going to give quite the right look, I feel like, over this style of corset. So I'm thinking of going and seeing if any of my really old underbust corsets might work better, because I am planning on probably wearing a bra with this anyway, and so I could just wear like underbust corset and bra. Now that said, it is also way too big. It's literally overlapping in the back and I want a 2-inch gap. I don't know if those other corsets are going to give me the same waist measurement, so I'm not going to change that yet. But yeah, it is way, way, way too big, which is good because I wanted to take in those panels that seem way too wide compared to like the front panels. So really, I guess that's a good thing. And frankly, the bust cup is not like terribly far off. I definitely do need to slope this in so that it's a gradual rise there, but yeah, it's not terrible. Let's go put on an underbust corset and see if that changes things for the better. Okay, so I've got an underbust corset on. This is actually the first corset I ever owned. This is a corset that I purchased. I don't even remember from whom, but I got it like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, I think. And it does, like, I like the definition where it's allowing, you know, boob definition, basically. This corset is not quite as small around the waist, so I feel like I'm not quite getting that cool, like, cinched in look because there's no hip spring whatsoever in this. It's actually like, I don't know if you can tell, but I feel like my hips are literally like poofing out from underneath the corset because A, it's very short, and B, it has no hip spring. I am laced all the way closed at the top and all the way open at the bottom, and it's still doing that. So it is not a well-fitting corset, but it's actually only ½ inch bigger in the waist than like when I'm wearing the 1860s corset. So it's probably more just that my hips aren't being allowed to be free, which does mean like this was giving me that hip spring, like this pattern was giving me the hip spring, but obviously it is still way, way, way too big. We're still overlapping in the back. So I have to take out at least 2 inches. I think from the entire back, we're really overlapped at the top. Actually, I probably have to take out 3 inches around the top, and down at the hips, actually we're not overlapping, so maybe only 1 inch. So I think I have to take out kind of like a wedge like this to get this to fit correctly. But I think I'm probably gonna go with this corset at least for now, though I am a little bit nervous because the stud is missing from the waist of this busk. I don't know when that happened because I don't remember ever wearing it without the stud, so maybe it's just been sitting in the drawer for the last 10 years, like slowly loosening the stud. But yeah, I think that this is still going to be the better option just because I don't own a bustier, and that's really, I should be wearing a bustier style corset underneath this like fake bustier outer corset. Guys, this is so exciting. Look, It fits really, really well. I have like the world's longest laces that I've just like pulled back because I did this back to front and then turned it around and then tightened like this. But yeah, this is the fit of the bodice now that I've taken it in and actually added, you know, the other cup on there. And I think it looks really, really good. The one thing here is that it's actually too long in the hips. I really love this cut. I think it is a beautiful cut and I would definitely use this pattern again with like these little tweaks that I did. But I'm starting to draw in a line over here because I know that this needs to be shorter because this has the tabs added to it. So it doesn't go very far past the waist, like the natural waist, and then it gets the tabs added. So in fact, I think that is still a little too long. It is like just past the waist, like maybe by about a ½ inch over here at the side. And then obviously it does dip down into a point in the front. That's a little closer. I think I'm gonna have to fiddle with that a little bit more in the mirror, but I think that that is on this side pretty close to where it needs to be. And I also think that these will, you know, stay up and look better once there's like boning and structure and more layers and stuff. But even just from the get-go, like right now, I think this looks really good. I'm excited about where this is going, and this is making me feel slightly more hopeful that I might possibly be able to get this wearable by Saturday night, considering it is now Thursday night. I'm starting on the bodice assembly right now, and I'm doing this a different way than I normally would a corset because I want to put a boning channel sandwiched between this and the inner layer on each of these seams, which is then going to be covered up with the stud trim. Whether or not I get the stud trim done in time for the party tomorrow, who knows? But what I'm doing is I have flatlined, kind of, as in pinned flatlined, the like shiny outer layer to the one layer of white canvas here. And then I'm treating that as one, but I'm not serging around that because all of these seams are going to be encased. So I don't really need it to adhere together like that because there is another layer that is going to go on top of it like that, except I think I have this possibly upside down. But yeah, they're going to be sandwiched between like this. And then once those are all kind of sandwiched, the boning channels are going to be stitched through all 3 of the layers, really kind of 6 because it's a seam allowance. And we're going to get 1 boning channel on each of these seams. I'm not super highly boning this because I am wearing a corset underneath. However, it does need its own structure. And before I do all of that sandwiching, I am going to actually stick the bust cups onto each layer separately as well, so those also get sandwiched. Keep in mind that the lower portion of the bust cup actually is the black and holographic material, not this white shiny material. Now, this white shiny material, I don't honestly know what this fabric is called. I got this from the Fabric District, and it does have a slight stretch to it. It almost seems like something that would be in like a gymnastics leotard, kind of that swimsuity material, but like stiffer and way shinier. And I have tested that I can iron both the back side of it and also for brief moments the seams on a lower setting. So I have my iron set to wool right now, and that's why I was able to press this. However, when I'm just like ironing the fabric, I'm ironing it from the back here and not the shiny side. And that's only because it has gotten a little bit of wrinkling going on since I first purchased this a couple months ago. Otherwise, I honestly probably would not be ironing that at all. So yeah, that's where this is all going. I am also still in the process of cutting everything out because I am like pinning each canvas piece to the outer piece as I go so that it treats as one. So I'm cutting each one individually. So it takes a little longer. And you know, there's 3 pieces per piece of this corset and there's a bazillion pieces of this corset. So hopefully I will get this done very, very soon and it will start to look more like a corset. So I now have the bodice layer right here and the inner bodice layer right here, and it's time to put them together. And the way that I'm going to do that is to put the right sides together, and I'm going to sew along the center back seams up here, all along the top. I'm honestly probably going to do a pretty small seam allowance all across the top because I didn't really have much I wanted to spare there. And then again down this side of the center back, leaving the bottom open to turn everything because the bottom can be very easily bound off, and then the tabs get added to the bottom, which is, you know, a whole other thing that I still have to make. Oh my God, I'm freaking out about how much time I have left. I literally have like about 24 hours in which, you know, I also have to sleep and stuff. So yeah, we're gonna see how far I get. Once I turn this all right sides out, then I can start sewing the boning channels. So basically on either side of each of the seams, plus a few other places like the center front, or like this panel is actually gonna have a boning channel partway through the panel because it will also have a stud row partway through the panel. You know, if I ever get to that, I doubt studs are happening by the party, honestly. But yeah, those will all get boning channels in there. And then I have to cut my like German plastic synthetic boning and put those in the boning channels. And at that point, then I should be able to close off the bottom. I'm also going to set grommets in the back. So there's going to be a boning channel like right on the edge next to the where the seam is. And then there's going to be a row for grommets. And then there's going to be another boning channel because you always want boning channels on either side of your grommets. Oh, I do also want to point out just really quickly that in putting in the bust area here, there were like a lot of seams, seam allowances to clip, seams to press, etc. Honestly, I probably could have done more and clipped in like some of this curve. And I'm going to hope that I don't need to do that because it does look pretty well pressed from the outside, and that will also get stud trim set over the edge of it. But yeah, that's what it looks like from the outside there. So I'm trying to figure out the order of operations right now because everywhere that there is like the Tudor striping trim, that has to go on certainly before the studs. And I think it probably needs to get put on before the boning channels because I need to like sew it on but not get in the way of the boning channels. I'm honestly not sure. Maybe it's better to sew the boning channels first, but then like in this back one right here, I almost wonder because there's another strip of this that runs up the center back that is not studded. It's just this trim, which this is like a pleather type trim that I got on Amazon. I will link it down below. And I don't know that I got enough of it for this corset either. I might have to get more, and obviously I don't have time to get more. But this goes along like that. And for one thing, I don't know that my machine's gonna want to sew through all of this because these are weird materials. And for two, I feel like if this edge right here on the edge is kind of whip stitched down so that it almost goes over the edge just slightly, this one could be probably stitched all the way through and used as the boning channel so that by stitching this down, I don't get it in the way of the boning channel. There are a couple of close-ups, I'll put one on screen right here, where you can see that most of this Tudor trim, or if not all of this Tudor trim, is actually sewn down by machine. You can see the little lines of stitching on it. I just don't know how possible that is with my machine. So let's talk about where we are at with this right now. I have sewn in all of the boning channels, so both the ones on the seams and the ones not on the seams, like this one right here. I do feel like the ones on the seams went a lot better. I had bought a roller foot to try and work with this, and I can't find it anywhere. And so what kind of happens is this fabric gets like hung up on the foot, and I feel like it kind of pushed down a little, which is why you're seeing these like V's go down. I'm really hoping that that will go away, A, once the boning is in, and B, once I am wearing it, because I'm not loving what that looks like. But there's also kind of no picking out with stuff like this because the stitches wind up so small. So then once I did all those boning channels, I went and I put my little black strips onto the center back area, and these are spaced 1 7/8 inch apart, and I just drew a little line with a friction pen and put those in. And then I stitched in this one right here. I've only stitched in this side because this is the side I was talking about probably doing by hand. It's so on the edge, and that's a boning channel. I didn't want to make it like any smaller. I was able to just do one stitch on this side and utilize that as the boning channel. And you might notice that I don't actually have a boning channel on the other side of the eyelets. I'm really hoping that I don't regret that. I suppose I could add one in, but what I would have to do is then unpick the little black strips everywhere that the boning channel needs to be, and those would have to be like hand sewn in just those spaces, which is why I didn't do one. And I do have a boning channel here, so it's not very far apart. It's just not as close as I would normally like it to be. And so now I am setting the grommets. My grommets are 1.75 inches apart. I tried to not have the grommets on the black strips because that's just, you know, more thickness to go through, and I pretty much managed that, so that was good. They have to be set pretty far down because there's going to be a row of studs up here, and then also there's going to be the seam allowance and a row of studs here. So basically that's going to be row of studs, that's going to be a row of studs, and then these are all of the spacing in between. So I have to set the grommets still on this side. Once I do that, I'm going to do another try on because honestly, I am worried that this seems smaller than my mock-up. And at this point, there's really nothing that I can do about that besides like add a modesty panel. I have no way to access seams or anything like that. Everything is very encased. I did, by the way, while I was going around and doing the boning channels, I went from the top side and I stitched around here as well, just so everything would be secure. I also stitched this section, not through the black because it's just so thick and that fabric really hates my machine, or my machine really hates the fabric, but I did stitch around the bottom edge of the cups so you can maybe see the stitches. I did it really close into the black so that they hopefully wouldn't be seen, but that just kind of helps to keep things stabilized. And it also creates the tops of these boning channels. So like this boning channel, the piece is going to go all the way up to the top, but then in the front, it just goes up to underneath the bustier. Hopefully that works with everything. Oh yeah, I guess before I try it on, I might as well actually put the bones in the channels because so far it has bones here and actually, wait, maybe that's it. I thought I had put one other in, but oh, I did on this side. So yeah, I have 3 bones in here. It's gonna have a lot more bones in there. So I think I'll set those in after I do the grommets before I actually try it on. Try on time. So this is the bodice currently. You can see the back there. So it does still fit the way that it is supposed to, because I think that is about a 2, maybe a 2.5 inch gap, something like that. It's hard to tell. And I'm also realizing I don't know how to tie this unless I tie it at the waist right now. And I think in the actual, it ties up at the top, but that's like impossible. Whereas if I do tie it at the waist, I can do that. Like I lace it up with the back to front and then rotate it around and I can pull it and I can actually tie, you know, I have the dexterity to do that. So that would be fine. And that's probably what I will wind up doing because I can't do it up here. That just doesn't work. The thing that is kind of annoying me is that I mean, I don't have this hemmed yet, but there's a lot of the black portion showing here and my straps are already showing too. And like, I need that to not, I need the straps to not show and I need the black to not show. And I don't think this wants to go up any higher than that. I also don't know how well it is going to actually like stay up because there is not really that much specific structure in the bust cups, particularly right now while it doesn't have the studs. But the studs also go like horizontally across the bust cup. So I don't know that that's really going to provide any additional structure once those are added. And those are probably going to be some of the last studs that I add. I don't know how many studs I'm going to have by tomorrow. And that is kind of my concern, is that like, as I put on all of these little stripey bits, the edges where they meet seam to seam, those get covered by the stud trim. So these are sewn on by machine. They're very easy. I could probably have all of them sewn on in the next, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, something like that, because there are like, I think 4 more panels on each side that need them. So there's a lot of them. Like basically all but 2 panels get the little Tudor strips going through them. But then you're going to see all of these weird edges where they meet or where they don't meet in the side ones and nothing to cover that, which I feel like is going to look really, really weird because like I could attempt to use that hot fix trim. Planet Rhinestone have not gotten back to me even about how to go about returning this. It is narrower and smaller than I want for the studs. And also I highly, highly doubt that I'm going to be able to heat fix this because we're going through multiple layers. We're going through boning channels with bones in them at this point because I've cut all the bones. I just haven't like finished off the channels down at the bottom. Yeah, I don't think the heat fix like portion of it is going to work. Obviously, even if I am able to hand sew them on, which I don't know that I really can because it's such a stiff gluey backing, but if I could like hand sew those on, it's still like that would save me the amount of time that it takes to set the studs on the ribbon because it does take me probably at least 20 to 30 seconds per stud to set them. And like how many studs is this? I don't know. It's a lot because I don't have a stud setter. I'm literally going with a like flathead little pliers and pressing each one. So yeah, it is 10 p.m. right now. The party is at 6 p.m. tomorrow. I'm probably going to work for another like 2-ish hours tonight. And then I anticipate that, you know, between eating breakfast, walking Lion, getting ready for the party, etc., that I might only have 4 hours tomorrow. So we're looking at only 6 hours at this point. And like, we don't have the tabs. We don't have any of this hemmed. We don't have the band that goes across here, which the band could potentially help to keep this on, but I don't really think it will, because I don't think it has that kind of hold. Like, it's not that tight to hold that on. But yeah, at this point at least, I think I actually do feel comfortable about just going ahead and folding down the black once over, like not worrying about the shape here, just folding the black down and hemming it. So I think that is actually what I'm going to do next, because then I can add the band, and then I can go back to sewing all of the little strips on, and I just don't know what we're going to get for studs. So I want to say wish me luck, but I know it's not going to happen. Like, this is not going to be finished. It's going to be wearable. It's not going to be finished. And I'm thinking one of the things that I might kind of skip for tomorrow is the tabs, because the first version of this costume, like when 6 first came out, I think even on Broadway, like certainly in the West End, and I believe even when it was supposed to debut on Broadway in 2020, the bodice had no tabs. It wasn't until like it came back for Broadway that the tabs were added. And I could be slightly off on that. It could be the Canadian pre-Broadway trial had no tabs, and then by the time it got to Broadway in February 2020, it did have tabs. But in any case, the original had no tabs, so it's not a big deal. Like, I could just, you know, serge or do just a quick like bias band, you know, bias turn up, something like that, to make it have a finished edge down here. It's those freaking studs. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So, and yeah, there's a lot of black showing. I don't love that, but I mean, I can only make it go down so far. Though, actually, the thing that I keep forgetting is that I haven't stabilized the little, like, gathered up part that is the center front of this bodice. I think I need to lay a little bit of, like, a twill tape or something behind that and stitch that in place, because right now it's literally just gathering threads, and I think the problem is that it keeps coming undone and ungathered, so that it keeps inching higher. So I think that will help a little, but yeah, I mean, oh, I guess it's that while I've been talking to you, the bodice has been slipping down. That's not good. I don't know. Maybe I could put like a whopper popper on the inside here to kind of keep that in place. That might be a quick solution that I could do for tomorrow, and have that hold up. So yeah, I might go ahead and add that like probably right before I leave tomorrow. I'm again kind of puzzling out the order of operations for everything here. I did close off the ends of all of the boning channels. Those are all set. And I kind of evened off the bottom too, because there were some places where like this layer had come over the back layer or vice versa. So I just kind of evened that off. And then I was trying to think of like, okay, could I start adding some stud trims? Because honestly, I'm feeling quite tired and hand sewing sounds delightful. And so I was like, okay, well, I made enough of the stud trim so far to be like the center front, for example. But then I was like, wait, actually, I can't put the stud trim down until I figure out the bottom. So that's when I figured out the bottom. And then I was like, okay, so maybe I can bind the bottom, and that way it's all finished off, and, you know, I can add tabs if I get there, or if not, whatever. But then I was like, okay, well, this is too thick to like fold over like that. And so I'm going to have to bind it with something that's like a double fold, and then stud trim can eventually later go over it. So I'm thinking like black double fold bias tape, which naturally I don't have and will have to make, which is annoying. But then I was like, wait, this part would go down before that. In fact, all of these would go down ideally before that, because then we can put the ends of the ribbon in there. Though I suppose we don't have to, because the ends of the ribbon can later be hidden by this stud trim. But I then can't sew this part down until I put the diagonals in there by machine. So that has to be the next step, is to do the diagonals. And maybe I can just like do the diagonals on these two pieces, do stud trim here, and then move on to like, okay, do diagonals over here, do stud trim along there and just see like kind of where we get to, which, you know, makes me nervous. But yeah, I've marked out here, these are going to be 1 5/8 inch diagonals, and these follow the line here. So basically it's 1 5/8 inch up from here, 1 5/8 inch up from here, and I'm going to draw my lines across and then sew that on by machine. And yes, maybe that would have been easier before I put the bones in. I don't know, but at this point bones are in, so that's how that is. The little ridges here are all sewn on, so now we're going to switch to hand sewing and hand sew down the stud trim in the center here, which hopefully I can make, you know, perfectly straight. It's going to be hard because honestly, like, keeping the ribbon straight while setting the studs is really challenging. So yeah, we're going to put that down, and then I'm going to make up more of the stud ribbon so that I can finish off the edges over here and also over here. And at that point, I'm sure it will already be tomorrow, and we'll see if we get to the ridges over here or not. Honestly, I'm kind of doubting it. The binding is complete here on the bottom. I just used really wide binding and folded over both sides. This will eventually get covered by stud trim, but not by tonight. I did also sew down the 2 lines of stud trim here, and I have created 1 additional piece of stud trim so far. I'd like to create at least 1 more, at which point I will put them here. Obviously, I won't be able to tuck the ends into the binding like I did in the front, but again, eventually it will be covered over with stud trim. I would just rather not have these like floating here tonight, even though of course it's the back and no one's really going to notice those anyway. Like, I wish that I had time to do all of the rest of the stud trim, because we've got a couple pieces here. We've got the Tudor pieces on these 3 panels right here, and then stud trim on every single boning channel. And of course, all the way around the top and around the bottom and underneath the bust. So lots and lots that we're not getting to this week, or at least by tonight. But I will have a wearable bodice. So now it's time to go back to the top and do a little strappy thing. So I don't have the corset on at the moment, but I do obviously have the top on, and I need to figure out, A, where does the strap sit, and also how wide it needs to be. Something that I have noticed just while like watching, you know, video clips or seeing a lot of pictures is that it should be really quite taut across the neckline here. However, it does seem like with most of the performers, when they like lean in like this, it does get a little bit gappy. So I want mine to be like as taut as possible so that A, it can also keep these bits in here and like help the neckline stay up, and B, it doesn't, you know, start to get gappy. And I think it is relatively structured. My plan with this, because I really don't think it's going to be comfortable if I have like this type of fabric facing my neckline area over here. So my plan is actually to cut hopefully just 3 pieces. I think that's going to be all I need, but it is slightly shaped, like it's narrower in the middle than it is where it attaches. And I think I can get away with cutting 1 piece of the black and 1 piece each of these 2 fabrics, and have the black be kind of a backing and have the other 2 fabrics on top. It's possible that I may need 1 more piece of the black and just kind of have like the backing black just be there to encase the seams, because I'm going to do a seam both top and bottom because it is shaped like that. I think that's going to be easier to get that all nice and flat. And then I swear when I'm looking at super close-ups that there is actually a line of stitching that goes straight across the middle of it too, and kind of helps to like sandwich that down even further and probably give it a little bit more of that like thickness and strength and support. So that is my plan there. And then it just gets sewn in on the edges over here, and the seam allowance goes out that way. So yeah, that should be fine. By the way, I forget if I told you this, but I did already turn the insides in over here, so that's why the neckline looks even a little bit larger than it did before. I really only turned over maybe like 3/8 of an inch, I would say, everywhere, and just sewed that down honestly with a straight stitch because of how much my machine hates this fabric. I literally just did a straight stitch, and yet it's still stretchy. So I don't know. I think it's because my machine has such a hard time feeding this through that it's making like the world's tiniest stitches, and therefore there is just more give because the stitches are like tiny. So yeah, that is otherwise how that goes. So I'm going to do that neckband, and then I'm going to have my little chain, which I got this chain spool on Amazon. I will link this down below. I'll link everything that I got on Amazon down below, by the way, in case you are looking for anything, because other than the Planet Rhinestone stud trim, which I have to return, everything else is from Amazon because I'm making this so quickly that I just needed things quickly, or I mean, there's the fabrics that I got from the fabric district initially, and I guess there's the few fabrics from Joann's, but everything else. So this chain is from Amazon. This is just like metal chain. I don't really know what it's used for because it doesn't seem like it's high strength. The later versions of this costume, including the one that I'm modeling this after, have a black ribbon run through this. So I literally just took a bodkin and ran a little piece of narrow black ribbon through, which I luckily had like just enough because my other ribbon, all of my other black ribbon, is being used to lace up the corset. So yeah, this is just going to get stitched in right below. So I have to figure out the length that is needed first on the band, then I'll probably put this back on and figure out the length for the chain because the band probably will change things a little bit. And yeah, hopefully that can all be done quickly because I have about 2.5 hours at this point before I have to like get dressed and ready to go to this party. Oh, and somewhere in that time I also need to make cookies, and if it stops raining I need to walk lion. So we'll see how far I get with all of this. My time is really running out for tonight. So this is the band. It is 1 inch wide, finished now at the center, and it's about, I think, like 1 3/8 inches wide by the time it gets to the edges. And I just have to kind of determine the best spot of where to put it in and then sew that in, and then I will probably sew those couple of stitches or those rows of stitches because there may actually be 2 rows of stitches across the center, and I think it's designed so that it won't stretch like this, so that it does actually do a good job of holding up the sleeves, because the sleeves are like so fitted and so thick that they definitely do want to come back over the shoulders. So yeah, I think that this will definitely help with that. And I'll probably run those stitches on there first just so that I can determine it without stretch and then sew that in place. The band and chain are both done. I do kind of worry that the band is still like too long because you can see just how much it moves when I move, but like I actually wound up making it a little bit shorter than I had initially anticipated. Like there's about 3/4 of an inch off to either side instead of 1/2 inch. And then this is the chain right here. So I just kind of at the ends, I wrapped the ribbon around a few times and then kind of whip stitched that on. I did have to sew this on by hand too. I mean, I didn't attempt it by machine. It's just so thick right here that I was just like, it's gonna give me more stress by trying to do it by machine than just by hand stitching it on. So that's all kind of whip stitched as well. So that means, although I haven't done the hems here, honestly, I'm not going to for tonight because I am kind of concerned that if I do the hems just by turning it in, that is going to be itchy and it's going to drive me crazy and it doesn't fray. So I'm leaving that as is. And so really that means that the shirt part is done. I've got 3 more bars to put on the waist of the skirt. That obviously does need studs, but that's going to be the last thing that I stud because they're not super obvious. So that's not getting studded by tonight whatsoever, which means that once those bars are done, I can move back into studding the bodice and just see kind of how far we get. I am also still kind of thinking that I might want those whopper poppers up here, but honestly, I think I might do that like as I'm getting dressed. I'm just going to kind of allow myself a little time. And I mean, it's a Halloween party. It's not like you have to be there right when it starts. Like I think it starts at 6 and it goes until like 1 in the morning. Like I'm not going to stay that whole time. It's fine to be late. So yeah, I think that I can do those bars and then move back into doing more studding so that I can at least get the studs right here done. And we'll see like maybe if I can get some additional ones done. I think that I would probably next up do the studs across the bust as opposed to doing the Tudor stripes here because A, I think they're more noticeable, and B, if I do more Tudor stripes, I'm just gonna have weird edges if I don't cover them up with studs. Whereas like I could do, you know, the strips across the bust, and even if I don't get the strips that go around the top or around here, because like you have to do everything in order. The order of operations on this thing, I'm telling you, it's crazy because it's like I can't do this under the bust type until I do these ones, and I'd have to do these and then the center and then the under the bust and then the around the top, and the around the top can't be done until all of these are done, so that's not happening today. But I have at this point just under 2 hours until I really should be like starting to get dressed and stuff. Gotta make those cookies. I don't think it's gonna stop raining, so yeah, I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna start sewing and studding. Okay, so I managed to make and sew down the last 2 strips of studs in the back here. This is all I've got in the front, so this is it for the corset for tonight. But, I mean, I think it's still gonna give the right look, so it means that it's time to start getting dressed and ready. I've already done my makeup that you can see here. This eyeshadow is all from the new Haunted Mansion Color Pop palette, which is a lot of fun and worked perfectly for this. And then I've got like the lashes on, and I'm also wearing the Haunted Mansion. It's the glitter that's supposed to be glow in the dark. I don't know that it actually is, but I think it's fun. I'll see if I can link those down below too, just in case anyone's interested. I get a lot of questions about my makeup on here, and I know I never really talk about it, but I'm always happy to provide links or information if you have questions, and maybe someday I'll do a makeup tutorial. But in any case, that is all done. I put this on because I can't do my hair and like the tiara piece and stuff until I obviously have this on. So that means now I can attempt to figure out how to affix this to my head. I was hoping to be able to put like little toupee clips on the bottom of here, and I know I have some somewhere. I have no idea where they are. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to just like pin this in to my hair, I think, and hopefully that will work. I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna put safety pins on the bottom of here and then pin bobby pins through the safety pins. I think that is my plan, but I am a little bit nervous since I am not planning on doing a wig for this, at least for tonight, that it will actually like stay into my hair because my hair is super, super fine and it just doesn't like have the ability to stay much. And the hair really is just kind of pulled back on either side of the hairpiece, so it kind of obscures the ends a little bit there. But yeah, I'm gonna go and put stuff on. Obviously there is a lot more of this costume left to be made, but I will give you like a kind of a little mini reveal and a little outro for this video, and then I will probably just continue working on this project next week. So next week will wind up being like the tabs, all of the rest of the studs, and the decorating of the shoes, because I didn't even get to start that. My shoes are just totally plain. So yeah, all of that still needs to come, but we'll get that soon. Anyway, I'm gonna go get dressed. So I can give you kind of a mini reveal right now, but I literally can't get far enough away from myself with this camera, like a horizontal camera, in my tiny house. So with lion included, here is your reveal. This is obviously not finished, but it does look really cute, and I think it's gonna be a hit at the party tonight. I did add a little black elastic strap right here. The original skirts, like before they had the tabs added onto the bodices, the skirts had a little loop out of the like holographic and net material that sat about here on them, and that was how they held their mics. So this is just like a karaoke type microphone that has its battery removed, so it's really lightweight. And yeah, I'm just gonna have that for the party today. I wish that this had pockets. Like, I know that the original doesn't have pockets, but in hindsight, I feel like I should have put pockets in it. But yeah, this is the overall look. Obviously, still need a lot of work on the bodice. And I mean, heck, I still need to put all of the studs on the skirt as well. But overall, I think it's super, super cute. I do think that when I do this for Comic-Con, I will probably wear a wig because I just don't feel like this is very secure right now, and I don't know that it would really be any better with the toupee clips underneath it. Like, I've got a whole series of bobby pins, but honestly, a lot of this is like my hair kind of holding in the ends to keep it on, and my hair is just so fine that I feel like it doesn't do a good job of holding stuff on. So I probably will go with like a blonde wig because she is very often, or usually when played by a white performer, she is blonde. So I will probably go with that for Comic-Con, but for tonight this is going to be obviously a lot more comfortable as well, and I'm very excited to see how people think about this. Another thing that I do want to add, like, that is not, you know, an exterior thing, is I definitely do want to add the minky to particularly the arm size, because I am feeling that holographic fabric in there. It is definitely prickly. Like, it's not awful. It's not cutting me. It's not necessarily itchy, but it is very prickly. So yeah, I think that is something that I will be adding before Comic-Con. I don't know if that's going to be like a next week ad or what, because I think it's going to take me so freaking long to stud this thing that I don't know that I'm going to be able to be finished with it next week. But yeah, this is the look. I don't think you can even see my shoes. These are Dream Pairs shoes. This is not sponsored. I bought this with my own money, even though they have sent me stuff in the past. But I think that these are going to work really well. I'll let you know after the party how I feel. And then these tights are from Amazon. I'm wearing two pairs. I'm wearing like a nude pair, and then I'm wearing black sort of wide and small fishnets that have rhinestones on them. So yeah, the boots didn't get any of their rhinestoning done. Oh well, hopefully that will be a next week thing, or at least it will happen before Comic-Con, because the boots are supposed to have rhinestones and studs like all over them as well. But overall, I think that this totally reads for the party tonight, which is going to be like all musical theater people. So I think that people are really going to appreciate this costume for sure. So I will potentially insert some additional thoughts that I have post-party, you know, after I've been wearing this for a few hours, and let you know now what post-party Rebecca thinks. So post-party thoughts, really the only part that actually wound up being like itchy is right in the armpit of the seam of the like arms eye here. That needs like minky or something, but the rest of it actually has been fine, though I did tell you I didn't actually turn in the hem here, so that could have wound up being itchy, but also you can't tell that it's not hemmed, so I might just leave that. And then as far as like recognizability, yeah, everyone who knew Six knew who I was, or at least knew that I was from Six. They didn't necessarily all know what queen. And honestly, when I mentioned that like it wasn't done yet and this was kind of just part one, most people were like, wait, really? What needs to be done? It looks finished. So that was good. You know, a little bit validating there. Obviously, I am still going to finish the rest of it. I'm probably just going to continue working on this next week. But yeah, it's good that people knew who I was, what this was, etc. I feel like my chain might be too long, or else it might need to be weighted more, because that, if anything, was like one of the things that I feel could have been better. It just kind of like got scrunched up and wrinkled and like didn't stay weighted. So I don't know how they do that for Broadway, but I guess I need to look into that further. The band, on the other hand, did actually seem fine. I don't think it was really like poofing away from myself that much, so that's good. And the shoes, although they did get uncomfortable after like probably about 2 hours of standing right in place, I did actually last in those shoes for, I think I was there for nearly 6 hours wearing those shoes. And I was not standing the entire time. I was probably sitting for at least an hour or so of that, but I was standing for most of it and they did pretty okay. It's actually now that I've taken the shoes off that my feet are like, oh my God, the fishnets are burning. Like just the fact that there has been texture under my foot, and now that I've taken the shoe off and I don't know, just being like on, especially on my hard floor, it's just like, I need to get these fishnets off. Speaking of the fishnets, that is one of the things that I've kind of been having an issue with tonight, is that the rhinestones on these fishnets, I feel like they just go up too high, and I have definitely been feeling like where my thighs touch, the rhinestones are catching on each other. The only other pair of rhinestone fishnets that I own, they don't go that high, and I know why. So yeah, that's a little funky. I don't know how to fix that, and I'm hoping that they have not torn, because these ones do a really good job of like looking what they actually wear, but I don't want giant holes in them, obviously, so that would mean I'd have to buy a whole new pair. But yeah, overall, super happy with how this turned out, and it was a great party. And so now let's turn this back to earlier Rebecca for the rest of the outro. But as far as right now goes, I am really loving it. Oh, one other thing that I did do is I actually safety pinned through to my camisole from right here, because my camisole was trying to creep out from like past where the shirt and the top and, you know, the bustier and everything were, and I just don't want things to move around. So yeah, I safety pinned through. Yeah, I'm very excited, at least with the beginnings of this costume. I think it totally reads for what it is meant to be. It's just not quite there yet. So more of this will be coming very soon. probably as soon as next week. But if you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, usually with sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and sometimes with additional costuming or sewing related content out on Saturdays. But I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks or join my YouTube channel memberships right here on YouTube below the video. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Jean and Kim. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!